everyone. Welcome back to another Monday book talk with me, AnnaLee Dragon, the director of the Kinderhook Library. So this week I wanted to do a little read-alike, watch-alike situation. So I thought we're going to talk about some of the most binged TV shows that were streamed on Netflix or Hulu or wherever. And if you liked a certain show, then I have a book recommendation for you that potentially you would like, and I can give you even the reasons why you might like them, the similarities. I've talked about book talking before or read-alikes before, in that the way that we generally do that is it's a little bit of a science where you ask the right questions, which is not just which books have you liked, but why you like them. Is it the main character? Is it the setting? Is it the type of novel it is, whether it's mystery or horror? Or, it's obviously a combination of many of these things usually. And so it's really fun to do this with a TV show. So if you've binged a TV show recently, and who hasn't in the year of the pandemic, then we have some great book recommendations that maybe if you liked this show, you would like this book. So what I'm going to do is what I've been doing. I'll put a cover of the book up and the TV show just so you can see them side by side. And then we'll talk about the book and why you would like it if you like that TV show. So let's get started, friends. The first pairing we're looking at is if you loved Schitt's Creek. And it is one of my favorite shows that I watched during the pandemic. It is heartfelt and funny and light-spirited, but also handles some weighty subject matter in a really nice way, I thought. So it's not complete fluff. I only caught on during the pandemic. It had already had several seasons on television in Canada. But so this is, it was newer to me. And so I got to watch all of the seasons at once, and it was glorious. So if you have not watched Schitt's Creek, highly recommend you check it out. But in addition to that, if you've already watched it, then there is a great suggestion that you read The Wangs versus the World by Jade Chang. And this is about a Chinese businessman, Charles Wang, who has a cosmetics empire but suddenly finds himself bankrupt, and he's got his kids who don't really have real jobs, and his wife, and he's he totes them around to a place to hide out while he tries to lick his wounds and figure out what he's gonna do. And so it has a lot of similarities to Schitt's Creek in that it's a rags to riches. There's a dysfunctional family element, but in a kind of light-spirited way, and also some heartfelt humor, which is, like I was saying, one of the favorite parts for me about Schitt's Creek was the jokes aren't cheap, and they're not it's genuinely funny, but people clearly love each other, and the family grows closer and closer through this trials and tribulations that they're having to go through, finding themselves penniless all of a sudden when they've lived very privileged lifestyles. I think it's a real hat off to the people who write, Dan Levy, who wrote the series, that you manage to feel empathy for these people, even though they are ridiculous in the beginning. Especially, they had so much money and they're so spoiled, and yet you end up really rooting for them throughout the show. So The Wangs versus the World is the read you should check out if you really love Schitt's Creek. It's available in the system, so you can borrow it through the Mid-Hudson catalog. Okay, next one. So The Undoing was a show on HBO, a limited series that I also binged, much darker and very different tone from Schitt's Creek, but I loved it. Nicole Kidman, Hugh Grant, excellent actors and actresses in the show, tense and a real, had a lot of twists and turns and things you didn't see coming. At least I didn't. As we've discussed, I never see anything coming. But I really loved it. It was dark and gripped me, and I couldn't stop watching. So if you haven't seen it, again, recommend it. But if you have, the book I would suggest is Lost You by Haylen Beck. So it says, for the first time since her husband's split, Libby decides to take her young son Ethan on vacation. When Ethan wanders out of view in a large resort, Libby panics, frenzied, because she hasn't told anyone the full story of what happened when Ethan was born. So hotel security discovers Ethan holding the hand of a woman, and when the police questions who she is and why she has Ethan, the woman claims to be his mother. The problem, each woman claims she is the rightful mother. So the similarities to The Undoing are, it's a whodunit, it has an unreliable narrator, which is something I always enjoy because that's what provides the twists and turns, the things you don't see coming. Is we tend to automatically trust the person narrating the book, and when it's an unreliable person, that is often a rug that is pulled out from under us, which can make for a great read or a great show. And it's also about motherhood, which if you watch The Undoing, you will see that as a heavy element in the show. So Lost You by Haylen Beck. Okay, I've got another pairing for you. So when we're back to humor, and many of you may have seen The Good Place on Netflix, I think it is, and it's hilarious. Also has some twists that you don't see coming. Very funny, very family-friendly kind of funny. Great actors and actresses. It was a wonderful series, and it had a really feel-good kind of ending to it. And so if you loved The Good Place, the suggestion is They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. Now, this is a young adult novel, but as I've discussed, I feel like young adult novels don't get enough credit. So this one, They Both Die at the End, the little description here says that in a world where you get to call the day you're going to die, Mateo and Rufus have both received their death casts on the same day. Both unsure of how to spend their last day, they turn to an app called Last Friend, which matches them together. Although they come from different backgrounds, they discover that it's possible to live an entire lifetime in just one day with the right person. So it has a unique take on death, a cute romance, it's whimsical. So I think all of those things are what tie it to The Good Place. So possibly, even if you have never read YA books, I would suggest give it a chance because it got really great reviews and it has a lot in common with that show. So if that show resonated with you, then this would be an excellent book to try out. Okay, I've got a few more. In another humorous take, if you have watched The Marvelous Mrs Maisel on Amazon, which I love that character so much. She is fantastic. That show makes me laugh out loud. It takes place in a time period. The clothing, the wardrobe in it is fantastic. And it's a different era. And so the social norms are very different from what I've experienced growing up. Everything about that show, I just adore. To her manager, who's like her comic foil and the opposite of Midge Maisel in every way. So if you are waiting, we are anxiously awaiting a new season of that show. If you are anxiously awaiting it and looking for something in the meantime, the suggestion is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Taylor Jenkins Reid has a new book out that is off the charts right now, popular, called Malibu Rising. So if you're on the wait list for that and you're looking for something to read in the meantime, this might be a great way to go. So The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo says it's been decades since infamous Hollywood star Evelyn Hugo has given an interview, but when she personally requests an unknown journalist, Monique, to tell her life story, the young reporter can't say no. As Evelyn recounts her tale of rising to stardom in the 50s, her struggles as a woman in Hollywood, and the truth behind each of her 7 marriages, Monique will realize that Evelyn's life was so much more than just words in a tabloid, and just how interconnected the two women are. So it's set in the 50s and 60s. It's a successful female career, messy divorces. So it's got a lot in common with Miss Maisel. And I've heard wonderful things. And as I said, Taylor Jenkins Reid is kind of taking off right now. Her books are super popular. So this isn't the newest one, but maybe it's a good one to read in the meantime while you're waiting for Malibu Rising to come to you in your holds list. So The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Okay, so those of us who are baking fans, I am one, and have watched the Great British Baking Show, which I know a lot of people were streaming during the pandemic, and also a lot of people were at home baking during that time. So if you're obsessed with the Great British Baking Show, this book, Little Beach Street Bakery by Jenny Colgan, might be the piece of fiction for you at this moment. So it's about a heartbroken woman named Polly who retreats to a sleepy seaside town of Polbairn where she distracts herself with bread baking, as many of us did. But what starts as a hobby becomes something so much more as Polly throws herself and her emotions into her recipes, some of which use honey supplied by the local and cute beekeeper. Soon Polly has a brand new life, one in which she is truly happy. So it's all about baking, it's cozy, it's got all the feelings, it's British, there's a little romance, a little meet cute, rom-com kind of feeling. So it's the perfect blend of things that you get out of watching the Great British Baking Show. So if you're looking for something comfortable and cozy and happy, the Little Beach Street Bakery by Jenny Colgan is probably the right choice for you. Staying with the light, fun kind of feelings that we're getting, if you watched AnnaLee in Paris, which I recently read, they had hoped everybody would pronounce Emily in Perry and it would rhyme. But of course, us as Americans did not do that. It's Emily in Paris to most of us. So if you watch that on Netflix, which I did, it was a frothy, fun, light story about a young woman who takes a job in Paris but doesn't speak French, and it was an unexpected transition. And so then she kind of falls in love with the city of Paris, but not without its bumps along the road for her. So it was just great fun books. So show. So if you liked Emily in Paris, you should try out 9 Days and 9 Nights by Katie Catugno. So the story of this 9 Days and 9 Nights is that Molly is finally happy, in love with her new boyfriend, and setting off on a romantic tour of Europe. But at their first stop in London, they run into Molly's ex, Gabe, and his new girlfriend. When Ian, unbeknownst to the ex's past, invites the couple to Ireland with them, Molly can't bring herself to tell the truth, so she agrees. Now she has to spend 9 days and nights with her ex and her boyfriend. What could go wrong? So it's Americans Abroad, love triangles, light, fun, frothy. Again, those are the kind of books that have lately been my speed because I am having trouble concentrating since all of the chaos in our world the last year. So 9 Days and 9 Nights might be an excellent choice for you. Okay, so the last show and book combo I wanted to talk about is The Queen's Gambit, which I am not a chess person, and I did not expect to really care very much about The Queen's Gambit when I started watching it, but I was almost out of shows, and so I turned it on. I could not stop. They made chess so competitive and fascinating and interesting and fast moving, and the characters in it are great. And it's about this young woman in a kind of a man's world of chess and what that looks like. And it was in the 50s and 60s, so it wasn't current day. And so the fashion was fabulous. It was just a really fantastic, enthralling kind of show. So if you liked The Queen's Gambit, the book that I'm going to recommend is The Girl Who Played Go by Shan Sa. So it's in 1930s Japanese occupied Manchuria. A teenage girl tries to avoid romantic and sexual entanglements by spending her time playing the game Go with strangers in the public park. But one of her frequent opponents can't help being drawn to her, and he happens to be a Japanese soldier in disguise. So the similarities with the show are games of strategy. I don't know much about the game of Go, but it's a game of strategy, coming of age. It's the 20th century, strong young women protagonists. So if you loved The Queen's Gambit, The Girl Who Played Go by Shan Sa. Okay, so that's everything I've got for you this week. I have some more book talks planned. I will be back next Monday. Feel free to come visit us. Please sign up for summer reading. I have amazing prizes in here for adults, and you don't have to be a kid to get prizes for reading this summer at the library. So come in and visit us. And if you have any questions or there's anything we can do for you, please don't hesitate to ask. And I will see you all next week. Thanks so much, everyone.